Hi guys, it's Chris from the Ultimate Recycler. Welcome back to the channel. One of the things we do on this channel here is repairs. I like to try and fix as much as I can. Most of my repair jobs aren't economical at all. I have a second-hand shop. I pick up a lot of stuff that I can resell. I like to resell things that go. I might spend a long time fixing this and still only get $30 or $40 maybe. But that doesn't matter. It's satisfying to fix it. The fact that we do get it going means I can sell it rather than throw it out like many people would. Now what we have here is a dome clock, anniversary clock, 400-day clock. They're called lots of things, but this one's probably more accurately just referred to as a dome clock because it is just a quartz movement. It's not a wind-up clock. So the anniversary or the 400-day descriptions of these clocks actually means that you only wind them once a year or around about 400 days. This one doesn't need winding because a quartz clock just has a battery. So this is a fairly modern one. I'll give you a closer look. I'll take the dome off so that we don't get too much reflection. It is a glass dome. So it's made in West Germany, which dates it anyway. So it's pre-1990s or 1990, I think. But it's all plastic, and being a quartz movement, the actual pendulum is really only for show. It doesn't do anything as far as the clock running. So around about 1980s, mid-1980s, something like that, they sell okay. We usually get about $30 or $40 for these, but they kind of do need to work. I guess if it didn't work, people would probably still use it as an ornament, but it's a clock, you know, you want to tell the time. What's wrong with this one? Well, I put a new battery in and it went for a little bit and then it doesn't go anymore. The pendulum looked like it was working. Of course, they have to be perfectly level for that to oscillate back and forward, but it just got slower and slower and then eventually stopped. The battery doesn't drive the pendulum directly. The battery is just for the quartz movement to run the clock. However, it does operate a little plastic pin that kind of flicks a suspension wire and allows it to spin back and forward. But again, it needs to be perfectly level, so it does have leveling feet on it. But nothing's working on this. It's not going. It worked for a little bit and then stopped. We'll pull it apart and we'll see if we can fix it. Quartz movements are generally quite fixable because nothing usually breaks in them. They usually just bind up, get a bit of dust in there, something like that. Have I fixed one of these before? No, but that's never stopped me before. Let's pull it apart and see if we can get it sorted out. Alright, so I've just put the battery in again tonight to see if it went for any length of time at all, and no, it didn't. So I'll take the battery back out. It has a little plastic door at the back here, and the battery is the not the AA, it's the, what size were these? A C size. So the first thing you obviously want to do if you get one of these that's not working, check the battery. Hopefully there hasn't been an old one left in there and you get corrosion on the terminals, which happens more often than should. These terminals are nice and clean, so I don't think there's any issues there. And I did check the battery. It's about 1.5 volts. It's supposed to be 1.5 on the meter. It's, I think it was 1.49. So it's not a new battery, but it should be plenty to run this clock. All right, so the pendulum is only plastic. Normal pendulums on these clocks are quite heavy because they've got to create momentum. But this one, as I said, is just decorative. So you still have to be careful of the suspension wire hanging it because we'd like it to work. So I'm going to take the back off the clock movement here. I see one Phillips head screw there. Might only have the one there. And we'll have a look at how the pendulum wire thing actually connects. Now there are a lot of these clocks around and they often turn up in charity shops. Quite often though they don't go. Or sometimes the clock goes but the pendulum doesn't spin. But they're nice. They're a nice clock and they look the part. I think they would have been mass produced in the 80s when antiques were particularly in favour. And the traditional wind-up, older and even antique clocks were quite expensive. So I guess these had a market, being a more budget one, but you still had that nice antique clock look. So there's our little movement in there. It's got the little coil, there'll be a crystal in there, some plastic gears, and this mechanism at the top here with a little, looks like a ship steering wheel, that's the movement that keeps ticking around. So it's just basically piggybacked onto one of the gears from the Quartz movement, and that will allow the pendulum to oscillate back and forward by giving that suspension spring there, which is really just a very fine piece of, like a ribbon wire, and it gives it a flick every so often to keep the pendulum oscillating. So I'm assuming that part's working okay, and the fact that our movement itself isn't working is why the pendulum's not working. I'm not sure how we're going to get it out of the road easily, because I'm going to need to take the movement out, and I can't immediately see how it comes out. And I think that little board just clips in. We might be able to maneuver it out from around this and not even disturb this spring. We'll take the hands off first. Now, do they just pull off, or does that part unscrew? I think that unscrews. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it just pushes in. There it does. Just pushes on. And I'll use a second screwdriver and we'll see if we can just lever the hands off. They just press on, but I don't want to scratch the face. There we go. That's the minute hand and the hour hand as well. They're obviously steel. They're attracted to the magnetic screwdriver. Okay, so can we get this movement out without disturbing the suspension spring? That probably comes off easily anyway. I'm just not sure how. So there's a plastic clip over this side. Okay, I've got both those clips disengaged, but I'm not sure what's holding it in, and I can't actually see a screw or anything there. Alright, I think we might take this out. I'm just looking at this retainer for this suspension spring, and I think that just presses in. It does, so that's easier. Less chance of damaging it. Will it come out of here? Alright, I think that can probably stay there. We could remove the bottom part and take it right out, but there's not much point. Okay, so that little plastic lever goes that way with the bottom prong pointing down. The rest of it is fixed. It's all part of the housing. So how do we get this little movement out? Oh, it's got clips here, has it? Oh, I've actually split the casing of the movement. I didn't really want to do that. I wanted to get the whole board out. And we've dropped a piece of plastic. That was our time adjust. I don't even know where that went. I'll have to look at the video. Alright, I didn't want to take that off like that. And it's not going to push back on now. So, alright, we have a bit of a problem. But I can't see how that board comes out. Are we going to get into serious trouble if we lift that off? Okay, certainly not the way I wanted to do it. That's a little shaft that goes right through. We don't have a second hand on this dial, but if we did, that's the one it would run off. But now we have a loose gear here. Okay, it's not the way I wanted to pull it apart. The little primary gear here that, whoops, has a magnet on it. Let's take those loose parts out. But how on earth does that board come out? So this gear is probably going to fall out. Alright, I don't think anything else is going to fall out at the moment. But I need to work out how that board comes out. I think it's just clipped in. It didn't seem to want to cooperate when I was trying before. Oh, geez. This feels a bit rough. So it is just held in by clips. Alright, there we go. Alright, well everything looks alright there. There's no corrosion to the metal. Those metal strips come up from where the battery clips in. So negative's that side, I think. Positive's that side. That part all looks okay. But now I've got this movement half disassembled, unexpectedly. So there's the tabs, they press against those metal strips. And I have had clocks before where you get corrosion in on here. But we haven't had any bad batteries in this one, so I think that's okay. I think our problem's more likely just to be a little bit of dust or hair or fluff in the movement. Doesn't need very much to bind these things up. Alright, we need to get into the rest of it now. It's got a couple of clips here. If I push those through, I'm probably going to have gears go everywhere. Let's try and do it this way. Okay, that's one up. That one's probably going to be soldered to the board, isn't it? Yes, we can't actually take that one up unless we unsolder it. But I need to get to the gears the other side. So I guess we've got to go into the other workshop and desolder the coil. Okay, let's add a touch of solder to the areas here where the coil solders on. Then we can use our solder sucker to clean the joints up. That should be all we need. That one's free. I think that's free. Should be able to remove that now. So let's take the movement completely off the board. No problems there. So there's our two pins from our coil. And we've got some more gears now. They all look pretty clean. But we'll pull them all apart, give them a bit of a clean, and reassemble and see if we can get some action happening, some ticking. There's a little bit of fluff in amongst it, so I think that's what the issue is. We'll go back to the other shed and pull it apart and give it a good clean out. Okay, let's pull the rest of this out now. We have a little gear at the end here. I've got some better tweezers than I had before. That's the hour tube and gear. And this one, well, they're known as wheels rather than gears. And this one's actually metal. Interesting. It does look a little dirty. So there's no more wheels or gears or components in there. That's totally clear except for our coil, which I presume will be fine because the clock did work for a little bit. So it would not work at all if that was shorted or had an open circuit or something. So that's all we need to do there. I'm just going to blow it out with a little puffer here. You could equally use a can of compressed air or something, but you just want some clean air. You don't want to just sort of blow on it because you're going to introduce humidity. We just want to blow out any little fibres that are likely to cause some drag on the gears or wheels. Sorry, got to stop saying gears. That all looks pretty good. So now I can reassemble, but we'll just give these a clean off. That looks a little tarnished. I think I'll clean that up with some IPA. But generally the wheels themselves and all the nylon components do not use any lubrication. You don't want to put oil in this, it's just going to gum it up. I just got a bit of IPA here on a cotton bud. Just clean off a little bit of oxidization on that one. Don't think that on its own is enough to stop the clock. But they have such a low power drive that the slightest amount of resistance introduced into the system is likely to cause it to stop. Now, that will dry very quickly. We don't want any fibres from the cotton bud still there. Okay, that looks all right. Now that one went in first, didn't it? Beauty. And this little intermediate wheel. And I better not be blowing fibres onto that. And I think they went that way, didn't it? There we go, that measures nicely. And this one went down over the top. And I'm not sure what this little one does. Is that the time set gear maybe? That way. So they will mesh fine. We probably can now resolder our board back on. Okay, there's no fibres on the board. I've given that a blown off, so we can now fit that back over the top. And the posts from our coil should poke through. And this one clips in as well. So we should be able to push it down to clip on. There we go. So our posts have poked through. We can just dab some solder back onto those. So that's now reassembled. Now we can put the other side together after cleaning those gears off. Now, which way did they go? I think that one drives through that hole. And the other little one goes next. And we have the one with the magnet on it. I think goes that way. And drops into that hole there, next to the coil. And the one that connects those two is under this casing here, which popped off. Oops, we've just lost one. We'll put that bit in a minute. And we'll be able to test this before we put it back into the clock housing. Which way did that go? Up the other way. Alright, we can feed this one in now. This one feeds down through, which way does this go? Ah, actually, I think that's in the wrong spot. I think that one goes in that way. And then that one goes down through the middle. That looks better. All right, we don't want to force this too much. Well, we don't want to force it at all. I want all the pivots to line up properly. And there are some plastic clips. That felt promising. It clicked in nicely. I think all the gears are aligned. All right, I think we should apply some voltage and see if it works. Okay, I have my power supply dialed to 1.5 volts. We have negative at this end and positive at this end. Are my leads long enough? No, I'm going to get a different lead. Okay, that's better. Positive at this end and nothing's happening. Let's see if we have 1.5 volts here. We do. All right. Well, something's obviously not right with the movement. Maybe one of the gears is jammed up. Maybe it didn't go in the right spot. But it's not going. And I don't think there's anything wrong electronically. I think it's just gone back together maybe the wrong way. We could put the adjuster on and see if we can turn it freely. That'll tell us if the gears are aligned. Okay, where does this... I think it just goes on there, does it? And yes, it's tight. Something's not right. One of the gears might not have gone into its pivot properly. Possibly that little one that came loose. So I'll have to pop this top cover off again. Which shouldn't be too... No, actually it's not quite home. Now it is. Was that all the problem is? No, it's still not working properly. Alright, let's pop that cover off. Alright, what's going on with these gears? Maybe that one wasn't seated properly. Seems very loose, that gear. I'll go to the other room because it's better doing it out there on the clean towel. There's too many fibres here. Okay, I just had a look at the footage and I think I've got this black gear in the wrong spot. Which kind of makes sense because it seemed very loose there. And because this one fell out before we were able to get the movement out, I wasn't exactly sure where it came from. But I can see on the footage that it's supposed to sit above this plastic, white plastic one. So it has to go over this side somewhere. Something like that. Yeah, I think it's better. Now we have to turn this up this way without that one falling out. Maybe I need to put them together this way, like vertically. Oh, I thought that might happen. Geez, that's not very well designed, isn't it? This is where assembling it with grease would be good, but it's obviously you couldn't do that because it wouldn't run. At least it would hold things in position. Alright, we just need that little black gear to stay in the right spot. And it doesn't look like it wants to. Oh, goodness. How are we supposed to do this? Ah, I know. Hope we're not picking up any fibres here. Let's put that one in there. And let's take that. Does that come off? Because ideally we want to press that on later. Oh, I feel like I'm going to break it if I push too hard. I think that's what's... Well, that's got a little spring in there too. I have to be careful of that. I think that's what was done, is that was pressed on after the movement was together. Let's just try again, doing it vertically, see if it'll hold together. Now, where did that one go in there? No, wrong end. Down this way. If I put a bit of cross pressure on that, it will hold the plastic gear in, the black one, in place better. Okay, that looked promising. Okay, that clipped into place very easily, and we can now check with this thing to see if we can wind the movement round on its own. Still too tight. Something's still not right. Oh no, hang on. It is moving it. It's not moving all these gears, but I can feel it moving the minute hand, or the minute hand arbor. So I think that might be right. Let's put some power on it and see if it works now. Okay, black. That's a negative pad, that end. And green is the new red on this side, positive. Power's on. Ah, we have movement. So our little magnetized gear, I'm not sure it's the primary gear that drives from the coil, is pulsing at its precise speed determined by the crystal over here. And it appears to be moving, I think it's moving that hand, maybe it isn't. Hopefully we haven't got anything else wrong. Yeah, it's not moving this, it's supposed to be moving this. Ah, I just moved, something clicked into place. I just heard a little click, and now it's moving this wheel, which is equivalent to the second hand, even though this doesn't have a second hand. And that's the little wheel that operates the flick mechanism for the pendulum wire. So the fact that that's turning means the seconds are working. All right, I think we fixed it. Beautiful, I can actually hear it ticking. All right, I think we can put it back in the clock, and we'll see if it runs consistently. Very good. I think just one of our plastic wheels, the cog hasn't meshed properly when we clipped it together, and just by physically turning the... Actually, I turned the minute hand arbor, and I just heard a little click and it started working. So I'm sure we're all lined up. Hopefully it's still nice and clean. And now we can get it back into here. Now, which way that one went? We've got to maneuver it under this bracket. Oh, that was probably the easiest way through there, is it? Still got to poke that through the center of the clock. Oops, I guess that one can stay off for now. It's clearly not designed for easy servicing. Probably never meant to come apart, you know. How are we going to get it under there without breaking something? Oh, I can't for the life of me get that in there. And that's all moulded. Oh, hang on, no it's not. That comes off. Oh, duh. Okay, that's a bit easier. In fact, that's doable, I think. Still got to line that through up there. Am I going the right way? Is that supposed to go that way? Oh, that was half the problem. Right, it's easy when you know how, hey. All right, let's push that down, engage the clips. Beautiful. Now this bit can go back on. Would have been nice to notice that earlier. Okay, now this little plastic piece went with that pointy bit going down. Did it go that side or the other side? I don't remember. We can now put our suspension wire back up into this top section. That's in position. I'm still not sure if that white piece is right over that side. I guess we'll see. Alright, we just need to put, oh, we still have this time adjust thingo to go in. That just sits over the top of that post. And we'll put our hands on, and then we can just give it a run and make sure it's going to work, and make sure it's going to keep working. I'll set that for 6 o'clock. Put a minute hand on, pointing to the 12. Is that the right way around? Yeah, I didn't think it was right. It looks silver. It needs to be black, so we had it back to front. Okay, we don't have a second hand, just has a button. Which we probably could have left off for now, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to be confident that it's going to work. And we'll fit the battery in, and hopefully it bursts into life. Okay, what's going on? I can see our little gear in there at the back of the coil moving. I can hear it ticking. Okay, I don't know if our pendulum wire is all set up properly, but we do have the center of that little wheel, that one with the spokes on it, is actually turning. There's a clutch set up there. It's got a little spring in there, but it's just a clutch, so that when this outer wheel is locked by this arm, it doesn't upset the clock still moving, so that's still ticking. And somehow this has got a release. If I push this off with a screwdriver, it'll start ticking it, I think. Oh, now this one's caught. Yeah, something's not right with the pendulum wire. You can see it moving there now. Push that away again. And then that, yep, that's working fine. But that plastic arm is supposed to hook it, I think, and stop it. I'm not sure why it's not. Something's out of alignment, is it? Alright, so our clock seems to be working, which is good news, but we need to get this pendulum hooked up. Admittedly, the thing's not level, but something's not right with the way this lines up. So I've looked back at the footage again, and this is why you need to video everything you do. This white piece is supposed to be the other side of that wheel. So how are we going to move that across? I might have to take this suspension spring out again. And that's the wrong side of that wheel. So we had the right way it went, we just had it on the wrong side. So there, that's the way it goes. And now it moves in and stops that wheel, and it relies on the pendulum tab flicking that back to release the wheel again. That's much better. Alright, let's put this back in. Okay, I have it back running now properly after a few adjustments and a bit of nutting out how it actually works, and it's running beautifully now. So I've given you a close-up here now, and we'll see if we can explain just what happens. The center shaft, hang on, I'll get something better to point with here, toothpick. The center shaft through this wheel here runs all the time. It's basically an extension of the second hand, and there's a fine spring inside that wheel that works as a clutch. So that means that wheel can be physically stopped and it won't upset the movement, because, as I said earlier, the slightest amount of friction will stop these movements. So it takes very little for this clutch to operate. Now what happens is the pendulum, which you can't quite see, but you can probably see the reflections of the brass in the pillars here, that gives it a bit of momentum, and this black plastic tag here works as a kind of a flag. So that wheel has spokes on it and it moves that flag around, and then it gets to a certain point over this side and it slips past those posts about now, and then it flicks back, pushes that lever, which pushes this little catch thing out of the road. And so the whole thing's a series of stop-start on that wheel. By that pushing that out, it then allows the clock to actually drive that flag across to give a little bit of a twist to the suspension spring. Once it slips past, the momentum carries it back. It pushes this out of the road and allows that to drive again. And it's a neat little mechanism, and it's amazing how well it works. So you can see now that it's pretty much independent of the actual quartz movement. You can have the clock running fine, and if there's a problem with this pendulum setup at all, that clutch will just slip. It won't matter, the pendulum won't swing, but your clock will still work. But it's nice to have the pendulums being able to swing. You're never going to have a situation of the pendulum working but the clock not working, because it requires the movement of the quartz clock to drive it. But there we go. If that made sense, well, I'm amazed. It's probably clear as mud, as they say, but it's a natty little mechanism, and all it does is just drives these pendulums around. And I'll just drop the camera down a bit so you can see them swinging back and forward. And it just purely oscillates them back and forward just for effect, because that's what anniversary clocks are supposed to look like. This one really is just a mock-up with a quartz movement in the back and a neat little mechanism to make the pendulum oscillate. Well, beautiful. Job's fixed. I'll move this other light out of the road. We'll move the camera up again. We'll back off a little bit on the focus, on the zoom. And I've got it balanced. These things do need to be balanced, otherwise the pendulum rubs in the bottom and it won't keep oscillating. And I've turned it around here now. The pendulum will stop until unless I actually rebalance it, which I will, or re-level it. It's now showing about 13 minutes past 9 in the evening. I'll leave it run on my bench overnight and we'll check it tomorrow. And now it's the next morning. It's actually about 10 to 10. The clock has run flawlessly overnight, and the pendulum, that's the oscillation you get from the twisting of that suspension spring. So it looks fairly realistic, but as I've mentioned, it's not critical for the clock to run. It's ticking away beautifully. It's quite fairly quiet tick. In fact, most of the noise you can hear, and I'll just move the microphone closer. Every 5 seconds or so you get that flick where the little plastic flag on the suspension spring flicks back to actuate that other white lever to allow that wheel to go past. And that's the most audible noise from this clock. You don't hear the ticking quite so much. Maybe if I have the mic really close you might hear it. But yes, if you see one of these dome clocks and you hear that sort of weird flick or tick sound every 5 seconds or so, now you know what's actually doing. Oh, it's stopped because the pendulum's not balanced. I've spun it round, and that's what happens. The pendulum does need to swing freely in that centre hole in the middle, otherwise it will stop. So the back cover's on, the battery cover's on, it's all back together, and I've left it running for about an hour and 15 or so. I've been out for a bit. So it's running perfectly, very happy with that. And now we can put the dome back on, and I shall take it to the shop. And I think we'll put probably $45 on it. They seem to sell fairly easily for around about that money. They never sit in the shop for long. And it's great that it's completely running, clock and pendulum. So job done. So thanks for watching that little repair, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you found it fascinating how those little pendulum clocks work from the 1980s with the quartz movement. Quartz clocks are pretty easy to fix because it's really not a fix, it's really just to clean out. I've had all sorts of just cheap clocks, cheap Chinese movements. You pop them open, the cheaper ones don't even have screws, they just unclip, blow out all the little gears, the nylon gears, put it all back together. They work every time. I don't think I've ever had one that hasn't worked. So if you get a Quartz clock and you actually like the clock, I know they're pretty cheap to replace, but if you want to have a tinker and you've got an old clock that's not working anymore, even with a good battery, and the terminals aren't corroded, sometimes you see the second hand just twitch a bit, or it might run for a little bit and stop, or it might stop at the same time each day. Have a go. Pull the movement out, unclip it, take a few photos so you know how the gears go back together, clean it out. You don't need a little puffer. You can use an air compressor, but just don't blow the gears across the other side of the shed. But just don't blow on it, because you'll create some moisture which won't do the movement any good. But yeah, clean it out, pop it back together. I reckon, I was going to say 9 times out of 10, but for me it's been 10 times out of 10. They work and they're pretty reliable for quite a long time because they're not powerful enough to actually break anything. The nylon doesn't really wear, so worth having a go, I reckon. And if it doesn't work, it wasn't telling the time anyway, so you haven't lost anything. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll do some more clock videos at some stage. I've got a lot of old antique clocks to get back into. I haven't done a video on those for a long time, but we'll get there. We'll catch you in the next video. Bye for now.